Hello everyone, Sandra here, and welcome to my monthly update video for December of 2025, which means pretty soon I'm going to have to remember to say 2026. I just want to say welcome to anyone who is new to seeing these. Probably one of the bigger things from this month to talk about is that tips, tricks, and advice for New Guild Wars 1 players video that I did adapting an old article of mine. That's definitely done, like, by the standards of my channel, extremely well. So I know there's a lot of new subscribers from that. Don't know if you'll see this video or not. Up to the YouTube algorithms, I suppose. Or at least for a bunch of you. I myself typically hang out on my subscriptions page. But this is something that I do monthly, just to talk about things that have been going on, what's been happening in my life, I guess, basically. And also things that might impact the channel. So obviously that video did super well. I am very, it's hard for me to say exactly. At least by my standards, it has done extremely, extremely well. So that's really cool. And the comments, which I usually don't get a ton of comments, so getting a bunch of comments of people kind of expressing that they appreciated the video, I found it helpful, was also just very encouraging. I made it because I wanted to provide people information that they might find helpful, that they maybe the game doesn't necessarily give them, or just they're having questions or whatever. And I think that article that I wrote is a pretty good source of that, but that doesn't mean it has good reach. And that's why I made a video version of it. I do want to briefly address, there's a couple comments asking about timestamps. It's definitely something that I thought about. I myself am not typically a user of timestamps, so I don't actually know what would be super helpful. Like, I know it's kind of meant to be sectional, like here's a section on this or whatever, but because I don't script stuff, I tend to want to work a lot more organically than that. That means, and there's a bunch of reasons for that, one of which is I want to actually make things happen, and scripting it takes up way too much time for me. I want to be too precise, and if I was going to get it done, I needed to just do it and not spend a bunch of time trying to script things. And like another alternative would have been me reading the article, but that seemed like it wouldn't be great either. So anyway, because it's very organic in nature, it's a little like there's a lot of little things that kind of slipped into various different areas, and it kind of makes it hard for me to know what sort of timestamps would actually be useful, especially since I don't tend to use them myself. So if anybody has suggestions for timestamps for that video, of what not necessarily specific timestamps, although those are welcome as well, but more what would actually be useful from a timestamps perspective as well. Like what would the timestamps be doing? Are they being used for like bookmarking or trying to find specific topics? Like that one would be really hard because it's like I'd have to be like, okay, and then I talk about this thing briefly in the middle of this other larger topic that I'm talking about, things like that. It would result in a whole mess, and that's part of the challenge there. Anyway, I just wanted to address that. Most people didn't seem to be expressing any comment on that, but since I got a couple comments about it, I wanted to touch on it. So as for this month itself, for me personally, a big theme has apparently been Pokemon Legends Z to A and rereading So I'm a Spider, So What, the light novels for that. We had so I'd gotten Pokemon Legends Z to A when it first came out, but I just wasn't, for whatever reason, jumping into it. I just had other things going on. And then on the 1st of this month, I have something that I do on my Patreon where I write a daily entry of what's been going on that day, kind of a journal entry. And then I write a little summary when I save, because I save those as text documents. And I have a little summary that I write for the file name. And so I look through those and I review those for these. And on the 1st of December, a Monday, we had an internet outage. And like we still had electricity, but we had an internet outage. And so that ended up being what prompted me to finally start playing Pokemon Legends Z to A. And I also ended up starting a reread of So I'm a Spider, So What. So I'm going to talk about those a little bit. Starting with Pokemon, I guess. So I've been a fan of the Pokemon series since Gen 1. I had a Game Boy Color at the time, but I played Red and Blue. Didn't play Yellow at the time. But, I was excited for when Gen 2 came out. I was like, what? There can be more Pokemon? Because, I was a kid at the time, and you kind of take the world as it is and don't really think deeply. At least that was my experience looking back on my memories as a kid of like the way that I approached stuff. It was a way of approaching things that honestly was really nice to think about. But like thinking back on it, just being able to take things as is. But that's not how I work anymore. So I recognize that there's people making things and they just don't exist because, somehow like there's not some sort of ethereal force that suddenly causes Pokemon games to spontaneously exist in cartridges being sold at Walmart or whatever, wherever I would have gotten them. So I was interested in Legends Z to A. I was curious about Legends Arceus as well, but I didn't get it at the time. But I was curious about Z to A and like, okay, a different style of like handling Pokemon. And so I finally started playing it, and I could definitely see where it might not hit well with some people in certain ways, but I overall really enjoyed it. There's a couple of things that I want to in particular call out, in no particular order. I guess the first thing I'll mention is I really appreciated just being in a big city. A lot of games, especially RPG type games, are about a journey where you're going like around some sort of world map. You're going from, I don't know, starter town to slightly less starter town to et cetera, until you get to the final town in front of the last dungeon or whatever. And it's the thing with that is like that's neat, but you're not generally developing an attachment with a place. And something that I enjoyed about Pokemon Legends Z to A, I don't know I'll jump around names for it, I'm sure, is that you're in a city. You are in Lumiose, and you get to know the various parts of Lumiose, and it's because it is, and like the city changes over the course of the story a little bit. But because you are there, that's where you are. You develop a familiarity with the place, and I don't know, it has a very different feel, and that's something that I really appreciate and really enjoyed. Because I feel like that's not something I see that often, particularly in RPG type games. Like it made me think of Assassin's Creed Revelation that takes place in Constantinople, and the experience that I had with that game is weirdly enough what most comes to mind. But there's other games too that take place in a city, often like open world games, like Saints Row 3 and 4, I want to say. The one that's like in the Matrix, I think is the fourth one. That game was a lot of fun. But so I enjoyed that aspect of it quite a bit. I also enjoyed the battle system. So a lot of, I'm trying to figure out how to exactly organize my thoughts here. So a lot of the traditional Pokemon battle system, I'm very familiar with your PP counts and your move accuracy and what are you doing for your action this turn. And they did a really interesting job of translating concepts to a real-time system with positional elements. Now, like, there's definitely room for improvement and polish, but like, especially there's some clunkiness with some of the positional stuff that notably comes to mind. But I really enjoyed seeing how like they did a pretty good job of creating different factors. Like accuracy is not a thing, right? But because there's positional elements, a pseudo type of accuracy suddenly comes into play. So a good example is, I think, of Thunder being more damage than Thunderbolt, but it also, like, moves basically have like their own individual properties, but it's like what's their area of effect, what sort of ranges they're at. So like Thunderbolt is much more reliable to actually hit. Thunder places a damage, like a danger puddle that you can run out of. And that's a way of simulating the accuracy stat without actually having an accuracy stat. And I thought that was really interesting. There's also, like, they don't have PP, but moves have activation times and cooldowns, right? And so this sort of simulates the same sort of consideration. But, like, more than that, it makes weaker moves have a greater feeling of viability because suddenly you have their shorter cooldown, means that you might be able to use it 2 or 3 times in the time that you might only be able to use, or that you might be able to use a more powerful move, right? Because it's like, oh, maybe it has a 3-second recharge as opposed to a 12-second recharge, right? That's a huge difference. There's also like, okay, this move is more powerful but has a longer activation time. This other move is weaker but has a quicker activation time. Maybe the quicker activation time is actually really valuable because it lets you get a move off before the opponent can get their stronger move off, and maybe you can KO them with that weaker move in sort of that time where they're activating. Like that's something else that can happen. So there's a lot of those little elements that I thought was actually quite interesting about the combat system in the way that it is creating more balance points, more places to sort of tweak how that sort of stuff works. I also overall enjoyed the story reasonably well. I wouldn't say it's anything super deep, but the structure being different, like there's a lot of parallels with ranking up and like gym matches and stuff, but it even with those parallels, it still was a bit different, and I overall enjoyed it. I will say Urbane, not my favorite character. There's a number of things I dislike about him, but I mean he works fine for what he's supposed to be for the narrative. And that you don't have to like every character, and that's fine. That's fine. So, and I also feel like they did a good job of following up on Pokemon X and Y, which I haven't played in quite some time, and realized that I don't remember super well. Like I remember some of the rough stuff, but also I really like Mega Evolution, and it was cool to see it back, and the way that they handled it in a real-time system where it's like, oh, you have a certain amount of duration for this, and the idea of plus moves being like a souped up version of moves that then you automatically have when you Mega Evolve. I think they did a good job with that as well. So a lot of the mechanical stuff I was actually pretty pleased with. So I enjoyed that game quite a bit. So that brings us to rereading So I'm a Spider, So What? It's a little bit messy where I'm at currently, but I started with book 1 on the first, and I'm currently, yeah, it's a little bit messy. I'm about, let's see, there's 16 books, and I guess I'm about, I don't know what that percentage-wise works out to. I don't know. I'm about like book 10 and a half. Let's go with that. 10 3/4. I don't know. I'm basically at book 11. I'm partway through book 10 right now, but I already reread book 11 because of some other things that are going on that aren't important here. But I really, really enjoy that series. And it's been interesting rereading it after having finished, or caught up, I suppose I should say, with that time I got reincarnated as a slime. I personally like Spider better. I do like slime, but I do like Spider better. I don't want to get into spoilers necessarily or anything, but one of the things that really has impressed me as I've been rereading Spider is I feel like I'm really enjoying the dramatic irony that I have of knowing the series, and then like things that are put in there, like knowing where things are going. Because so for those who are not particularly familiar with So I'm a Spider, So What? The light novels are written from the points of view, like the internal monologue is kind of the presentational style of the point of view characters. And there's several of them over the course of the series. But it's because it's given from their points of view, you have, like, the author does a pretty good job of having an understanding of the limited knowledge that certain characters have. And so because I, as somebody who has read the whole series, have a greater body of knowledge due to that, I'm able to know where I know things that the characters don't know. And so that creates dramatic irony where you know something that a character doesn't know, right? That's kind of dramatic irony, is best I understand it anyway, from the way my English major sisters described it. And because of that, like, I'm able to appreciate that aspect of the story, which I couldn't have the first time. So I think this is like my third time rereading it, something like that. And I feel like the story gets richer, like has gotten richer as I've read it, and have a better grasp of the overall story and the world and everything. And I'm able to like notice more individual little details in the storytelling. And so it becomes like even richer each time I read it, which I think is a really good sign. Like there's some stories where the one that immediately comes to mind is The Force Awakens, where it's like the first time I watched that movie, I was like, whoa. Is it The Force Awakens? I always kind of get a little mentally confused with the game the Force Unleashed, but those are two very different things. I think it's Force Awakens, where it's like, the first time I watched it in theaters, it's like, whoa, this is such an awesome experience. And then like each time I rewatch it, it like gets worse and worse as I'm like noticing all these little but why is this character motivation, or like why is this character doing that, or there's just so many little things that it starts to kind of fall apart on me. And if you like it, that's fine. But I mean, all of this is art. Art is always appreciated subjectively. I think is the word I want to go with. But I feel like, the more times I've watched The Force Awakens, the more I'm like, this just feels like a 6-year-old boy playing with action figures, just very expensive action figures, whose sense of a plot is based entirely upon that. And it did, yeah. So, but I feel like as I've been reading Spider, it's like, oh, and here's this little thing, and it just gets richer, and I'm really appreciating that. So I'd really, really like to see a follow-up series. I'm not sure. Like, I could think of clever titles, but it doesn't really matter. But I'd like to see something that at least continues with some of the characters as makes sense. So I've been really enjoying and appreciating rereading that. And there's other things too that I've been really appreciating with it. One of the things that the series does super well is reactions. So this is something where like it's context giving, right? Where it allows you to be able to appreciate the significance of what's going on. This is actually something that's a huge problem in a lot of RPG games as well. Is like your main character gets stronger, but because they level up enemies at the same sort of rate, you don't really get to appreciate that unless you have some weird reason to go back to an earlier area and suddenly you're just crushing everything. And that's just not how RPGs are made, right? It's like, okay, we want to give you a continuous level of challenge. That's why I think something like the Guild Wars games, Guild Wars 1 and 2 both do this, where you hit max level and then you just stay there, right? Like most of both of those games are made for max level characters, because that means that they don't have to continually ramp up the challenge so they can meet your power level and keep the game interesting. There's just like a static power level, roughly, for the player, allows us to be able to keep the game consistently engaging, so we're not having to artificially inflate it. Because like most games, what are you getting out of having greater power levels, right? So anyway, one of the things that's done really well with Spider, in my opinion, is giving you contextual reactions to help you understand some of the significance of what's going on. There's particularly a scene, I think it was in book 4. I'd have to double check. I could double check, but I'm not going to because it'd make the video weird. But it might have been book 3, but whatever. It's fairly early on, where our main character is like seen doing something from another character's point of view who does not have context for, like, doesn't, like, we've been so caught up in our main character's point of view that we don't understand the significance of what she's been doing. And so we get somebody else's context who does understand the world a lot better, and is like, the way that character reacts to what our main character does gives you a much greater sense and appreciation for how much of an outlier our main character is. And that sort of thing happens frequently throughout the series to give you a sense for, like, it's clear that Okinababa, the author, wants you to understand what's normal so you can understand how abnormal our main characters are, and you can greater appreciate that abnormality. And I think that's something that is done really well, and that I really appreciate and like about the series. There's lots of other things too. The world building is just, it's so well thought out, and I really appreciate it. So, like, it's been great reading it again and getting to once again appreciate all of those details. So those are some of the big things from this month. There's been some other stuff as well. Obviously, the Guild Wars Reforged update was pretty significant for Guild Wars 1. Just what's really interesting is it's not so much the update itself, but it's the promise of what 2 weeks working on the game means. Of like, and Reforged mode, that was a surprise drop, man. Getting to see, and I know I talked about it already in streams, but getting to be able to see those old character select screens that like the original one for Prophecies is like so long ago, and I saw it for such a relatively brief window. Because like what they did is, for those who aren't not familiar with this, is when you log into the game, it brings up a list of your characters, and then so for you to pick which one to actually play as, and that's a character select screen, right? And so the way that it worked is when they released a new game, that it would come with a new character select screen. So we've had the one for Eye of the North since 2007 when Eye of the North came out, which is a long time, like 18 years. And so like we've had that one for over a decade and a half. The Prophecies one we saw until Factions came out in, what is that, 2006. And we saw that one until the Nightfall one came out in later in 2006, right? Because I don't remember the exact release dates anymore. I could look them up, but I'm not going to. But Factions came out earlier in 2006, probably, I don't know, springish. And then is more like autumn, like basically 6 months later, that Nightfall came out. So we saw, and then like in 2007, the Nightfall character select screen was replaced by the Eye of the North one. So like we saw those for just brief windows, and like the Prophecies one was so long ago, and like, just probably saw it for maybe 8 months, something like that, because I started playing in the autumn of early autumn 2005, a few months after the game came out. And is like, that is such a lodged, like, because my memory of it is my 4 characters lined up, and then in that camp, because it's like an encampment, because we only had 4 character slots back then. I talked about this on stream, but so it's just really cool to be able to see those old character select screens again. And like there had been requests to get them, and we were told that it wasn't possible, but then 2 weeks managed to make it happen, and that was just amazing. Reforged mode itself, not anything super spectacular at the moment. Like getting a new outpost, however, it's the promise that it holds that is super exciting. So I'm really curious to see what they do with Reforged mode in this next year. And it is so wonderful to see life being breathed back into a game that I love. And like I would have kept playing it regardless, because Guild Wars 1 is like one of my favorite games ever. Like Magic the Gathering is its main competition. And they're kind of similar games in some regards. So it tells you what sort of games I like. But being able to like have that promise of something happening is just very exciting. So let's see, some other smaller things. I'm just glancing down at my those titles. I picked up Wordplay on the Steam Winter Sale. For those who don't know, this is by Mark Brown of Game Maker's Toolkit. I think a way to describe it is kind of like Scrabble meets Balatro. I haven't played Balatro, so I can't actually comment on that. But it's a game where you get a 4x4 grid of letter tiles, each with a point value, kind of like Scrabble, as I understand it. I haven't played much Scrabble either, so I remember a version of Scrabble where you could stack tiles. But that's neither here nor there. That's just like the Scrabble that I might have played when I was younger. I don't think we have that anymore. We, I don't know, had a lot of board games that when we moved, I don't know, half my life ago, we did something with where we didn't keep them. I assume we gave them away or something, but I don't know the details. But anyway, the point that I'm getting at is the goal is to make words, to score points, to hit a point threshold to finish the round. And then you want to complete a certain number of rounds. Depends upon your difficulty mode a little bit. 10, 12, something like that. That's typically what I've seen. And you get, like between rounds, you get to pick some sort of perk. So this can be a modifier, which can increase points in some way or another, or some other sort of benefit. Or it's an upgrade that allows you to be able to modify tiles into either special tile types or add point values to them, or there's some various other things that can happen. Like it's hard to to be too specific because there's a good bit of variety and functionality, but it is a general rule of thumb. Like there's different tile types. Like for example, there's emerald tiles that have a 1 in 4 chance of being worth 5 times points. There's diamond tiles that are worth more the longer they stay on the grid. And then when you use them, you can cash in their cache of points. So it's a matter of how long are you going to bank them for? Because there's no value to overpointing on a round. So, but the tiles, you can also refresh the tile grid if you want to. There are special rounds with special rules. So sometimes it'll automatically refresh your grid, like between every word. Sometimes it's one of the roughest ones that I've run into so far is words less than 6 characters in length are worth 0 points. And the way the game works is I think you have to have at least a 4-letter word to submit. I actually haven't tested that. I don't remember, but that's my impression, based upon the way things are presented. And I'm sure it's been mentioned in some video because Mark Brown did some videos on the making of this game on Game Maker's Toolkit. But then the longer a word is, like once you hit 5 letters, you start getting bonus points for length. And those rack up pretty quickly if you can make a long word, which is very hard because you have to get very lucky. But I've been having a lot of fun with it. It is very mentally taxing, but it's been a fun game. So I've just played that for a few times. I also got the new Lords of the Fallen, not to be confused with the old Lords of the Fallen. I don't know why they kept the same name, but it's very confusing. And Dragon Quest XI because I wanted to experience the Dragon Quest series outside of the Builders spin-off games. I've really enjoyed the Builder spin-off games, but it's just Dragon Quest as a series is very influential, particularly in Japan, and so this is one that I've had my eye on for a while. So, but when I was putting Lords of the Fallen onto my Steam Deck to play it there, because I figured it'd be easier to play there, I also happened to discover that Heretic and Hexen got a sort of combined, upgraded re-release, kind of like Doom 2, and Quake did. So I've been wanting to replay Heretic. It's been ages, and I wanted to try playing it on my Steam Deck in particular because I did get like Doom 2, and Quake on my Switch, and often those games have given me motion sickness, unfortunately, when I've replayed them. For those who might delve into the depths of this YouTube channel, I did do a playthrough of Hexen because it's a nostalgic game for me. But the session length was like, okay, I'm getting motion sick, so I have to stop here, sort of thing. Same issue happened with what was it called? Battle Mage, something, I don't know. Lichdom Battle Mage, something like that. Which was a neat game as basically a magic-based first-person shooter where you can kind of combine spell properties together. Not like super elaborate, but it was interesting enough. But I had motion sickness issues with that, and also with Senua Hellblade Sacrifice. But I discovered that like playing Doom on my Switch, I wasn't getting motion sick with that. And so I've kind of figured the smaller screen is probably helpful for that. So I was wanting to see if I could try to replay Heretic, which is a Doom engine first-person shooter. But it's like a fantasy version of Doom, basically. Not like Doom is a science fiction game, but it has its own fantastical elements. Quake is just like whatever, but I kind of enjoyed that about it. But anyway, I've been wanting to replay Heretic, but I was like, I kind of want to play this on my Steam Deck because I think I might, just to see if that means I don't get motion sick while playing it. So seeing that they had that re-release, it freed if you already own the games, was very exciting. Just a little thing that took me by surprise. So I was happy to see that, and that's something that I might be trying out. So you might hear about that next year, or the next month. Same difference, I suppose. Other things to mention, I've been continuing to work on my fiction book. It's coming along. I'm happy about it. I hope, like, it's going to be a whole process of making it like actually a thing, but I hope that people do enjoy it when that happens. I want to make it that way. So I think that's most of it. I have checked out the Night Rain DLC a little bit, Elden Ring Night Rain. I do want to spend a bit more time on that, but I've had other things that have been distracting me. Also, uh, I have in my notes, there was the Guild Wars 1 traders freeze, so like the Rune Trader, Insignia Trader, and etc. That apparently was triggered by like certain items changing values a certain amount, triggering some code that like wiped all the merchants or something. It was utterly bizarre and wild and an unprecedented event, and that was really interesting. But the only other thing that's really standing out to me here was a bizarre dream I had about a nonsensical shower uh, that was like in a closet and required a laptop to operate. It was strange, but that's dreams for you. Anyway, that's where I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here. I feel like it's been a pretty good month overall. And we'll, boy, things that I know are coming up. Oh yeah, you probably can't make them out, but I did get to draft the Avatar: The Last Airbender Magic the Gathering set a couple of times, and that was a lot of fun. My local game store also did another Final Fantasy draft, which I also enjoyed. But things that I'm looking ahead to next year, one of the big ones is doing the I like to do once a year kind of a review of the past year with like goals that I had set, and then kind of set some new goals. And that is, so that's on my blog, and preparing that. I'll link to the past, the previous one, I guess, in this video. Sure, why not? You can find it in the description below. And I need to review that and write the next one. So that's kind of one of the big things I know is coming up for me. So anyway, that's where I'm going to go ahead and wrap up finally. And so until next month, everyone, Happy New Year. Thank you very much for watching. Take care and goodbye.